If you just copy paste what we have, like a conversational AI, basically, this might not be the thing that your customer needs. I think you need to, this is my take on this, you have to kind of look deeper and leverage the technology, but then build it in the way that it's useful for your customers.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Growth Leap. I'm your host, Michel Gagnon. We talk to pretty awesome business builders who are designing disruptive and meaningful companies. There are two really hot topics at the moment, product-led growth and AI. Well, it's your lucky day because in today's episode, we talk about both. My guest is Henning Heinrich, a seasoned product growth expert who has helped companies in Germany, the UK, Canada, and the US drive millions in incremental revenue. He's currently the group product manager at Hootsuite, one of the leading social media marketing and management tools. We talk about how he got his start in growth, core concepts of product-led growth, and how to run effective growth experiments. Henning shares the frameworks he uses to prioritize experiments and quantify opportunities, and we go through a real example of price test that you can try. We also talk about why you should iterate on failed experiments and how to do user research, including which questions not to ask your customers. Finally, Henning explains 3 ways you can build a product-led pipeline, and he shares his take on ChatGPT. Enjoy. Henning Heinrich, welcome to the show. Super happy that we finally managed to talk. You are a group product manager at Hootsuite. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you ended up there? Not many people, until recently, studied growth marketing in the University of Product Management University. So I'm really interested in understanding a bit better the path that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. I started my career in in growth before growth was a thing, really. Back in the day, it was more around like digital marketing, those kind of things. And I naturally kind of gravitated into conversion rate optimization then and testing, A/B testing, experimentation. So spent a lot of time, a lot of my career in like experimentation. And then kind of growth marketing became a thing, right? Like, again, it wasn't really like, hey, I want to be a growth marketer. It's just like naturally, growth marketing became a role, and moved into that, really focused on acquiring users, acquiring customers, acquiring signups, trials, depending on which company I worked for. And then from there, moved into the product because I got more interested in retention. I felt the, like we used to say, I felt the bucket at the top, but I've seen it leaking. And got really interested in that and wanted to kind of avoid that leaky bucket, and went into what we call product growth today.
As you said, the growth marketing or product growth became a role. A lot of people use these terms as if everybody's clear on what we all mean. But I'm really interested in understanding how your team at Hootsuite is set up. Can you share a bit about what your team looks like, but also how it interacts with the others?
Yeah, for sure. My team is made up of a couple of product marketers that oversee, certain areas of the customer journey. We have teams very focused on activation. So, customers coming in, unlocking first, doing a first visit, unlocking some value for them, doing the onboarding, those kind of things. We have a team that looks after adoption. So once they are, move into kind of being a beginner with our tool, what can we do to make them regulars, deeper functionality? And then we have a team very focused on expansion. So once they become regulars, we always see, do you want to adopt more functionality, buy more functionality? And then we close the loop with advocacy. So we have one team looking after advocacy, which is kind of, if you have customers that are your champions, why not use them or get their support to kind of advocate for your company? That's kind of the loop that we look after, and that's how our teams are also set up. And then there's obviously the people that don't want to stay with us anymore, that are at risk and want to cancel. And so we have a team looking after that as well.
Since I think you've been on both sides of the fence, How do you see growth marketing versus product growth? What are the key differences? And also, is that, and I'm assuming it's reflected into how the other teams are set up?
My short answer is growth marketing really looks after acquisition and product growth looks after retention, right? There's three levers that you can pull when you want to drive growth. That's acquisition, retention, and monetization. Monetization can sit either on the growth marketing side. Right now for us, it sits very much on the growth marketing side, but could also sit in product, right? And there's some overlap. As I said, we're looking after expansion, for example, which has a lot to do with pricing and packaging as well. But yeah, in a nutshell, growth marketing, acquisition, product growth looks after retention.
You said a while back that growth marketing is not a magic potion, it's a habit. And I know that you do CrossFit, you're a CrossFit athlete, which I believe requires a lot of developing good habits. Can you tell us a bit what a good growth habit would be?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it's about stacking good habits. You're right? I think back then when I said that, what I really meant by that is at the time there was a lot of hype around growth hacking. There was like, hey, there's like this one magic thing, because you had companies like Airbnb that just done this thing with Craigslist, right? They posted on Craigslist and they basically had a 10x growth leveraging another platform, and that was the growth hack. And at the time, everyone was like looking for those growth hacks, but the reality is it wasn't one thing that they came up with and magically they grew 10x, right? They probably tried 1,000 things before that, and then they found this one thing that worked for them. But it doesn't mean it works for any other company. It doesn't even mean it works for any other marketplace, right? So my point back then when I said that was around, well, approach it more like an iterative approach, right? You have hypotheses, you test those hypotheses, and either you test them right and you find something that works, or you don't, right? Regardless, it's not that one magic thing that you can just copy paste from another company.
I'm interested in the process, right? And how you actually run it with your team. I mean, there's been books like Hacking Growth that have been written about the step-by-step process. I think conceptually speaking, it's relatively easy to understand. The challenge I feel with any frameworks, concept, or processes to actually implement it in your teams. So I'm really interested, like if you can walk me through, like, I don't know, a day or a week, just to see how you manage the process with your team.
On a very high level, we have a dual track approach. So we do discovery and also delivery. Discovery for us is like really diving into understanding the problem. Delivery is delivering the solution. We're spending a good amount of time on discovery, really understanding the problem areas first. The way we do that is talking to customers, right? Like there's a lot of qualitative data points that we get, really understanding the customer pain points, not just looking at data and coming up with a hypothesis, but actually talking to customers, understanding why, and getting to the root cause of their pain and their pain points, right? From here, we kind of find areas where we want to dive in, right? We want to understand better. And what my team is doing is as a next step, they look at quantity and they quantify the problem. Because what I see a lot is, as product marketers, we're so trained to kind of look at what are the customer pain points. And when we find a customer pain point, we're so excited that we want to build a solution for them, right? But we jump sometimes a little bit too fast into solutioning. So what we need to do, and what I see a lot, is like the problem that we identified is a problem, but it's a problem for maybe one or two customers out of 100,000 customers, right? If we would build a solution, it's not really solving anything for our entire customer base. And so as a next step to avoid that, what we do is we look at opportunity size, or the problem size, basically, right? We look at it is a problem, but how big is the problem, which goes into kind of prioritization, understanding the impact and those kind of things. We work very closely with our counterparts in engineering and design to understand what effort would look like. So that's the next thing. If we would tackle this, right? Like what is that like in terms of scope? Will this take us half a year? Will it take us one sprint of like 2 weeks? And then we prioritize those things. And then we go into delivery. We can build like what we call minimal viable tests, which is we're not going to build the entire big thing, but we just build, maybe a slice of it, test it, and see if we can, if there are some signals, right? See if we can validate some of the thinking that we had, and if we see it, then we double down on it and we build it out properly, right, and spend more effort on it.
You mentioned quite a few interesting things in there. I want to talk about user research, but just before quantifying the problem, which also conceptually sounds easy to do, but in my experience, people tend to overemphasize or overweight a specific criteria versus the others. I'm really interested in how you measure the, I don't know if it's the impact of your ideas, if it's just in terms of potential revenue or retained customers. What are the usual key metrics that you would put into that evaluation?
I've done this in the past, totally overestimated what impact could look like, and you learn from that, right? I think the key is to go to be very conservative. If you think it will impact 10% of the customer base, bring this down maybe to 1%, or bring it down to half of it to 5% and have a more conservative number. The other thing is you need to figure out what your success metrics are first. Let's talk about activation. There's different moments in the customer life cycle that we're trying to hit. The first is a setup moment, which is basically we're looking at what's the minimum requirements that we need to get someone on our platform. For Hootsuite, that would be they need to authenticate with their social profiles, right? Like we need to build a connection between their Facebook profile and Hootsuite, for example. That's kind of the minimum. It's a setup moment. And this just as an example, we have 3 of those in activation. One is aha, when they get to like unlocking value and they're like, aha, this is the value here. And habit moment is like starting to build that habit around using the platform, right? Why am I saying all of this? Those moments are really important for us to measure how well we do in activation. And we also build like correlation between those and early monetization, first time payment, etc. Right? So we see someone that reaches that moment is X more likely to pay us, and we use all of those correlations, etc., to really understand what is the top line impact. And once you do the math and like really go into that, and it's not 100%. It's not that everyone that gets activated is going to pay us, right? Those numbers are actually quite small. And once you put all those filters, all those lenses on top of your assumptions, you get to like a lot more conservative number than you may have had in mind when you started this.
If you use the I scoring method, you end up with an I score, which is a combination of 3 numbers. Are you using something like this? Is it the Pi framework that you're using or something else? And do you still end up with that, consolidated number?
Yeah, I think in terms of opportunity sizing, I would say that's the I and I. So I, for everyone that's not familiar with it, stands for impact, confidence, and effort. So it looks through those 3 lenses to understand what the overall opportunity looks like. In terms of like understanding the size, really, I would say I would put that in the impact bucket. Short answer is yes, we use eyes. The confidence is like I'm asking questions around like what are the data points really that support our idea here or our hypothesis, right? Like is this just like just an idea that someone had and we don't actually have any data points backing this up, which is fine sometimes, right? That's what I meant earlier is like if we have that, well, just keep the effort low, test something and see if you can get some signals, get some data points that would, justify spending more time on this. The PI framework I love because PI, for everyone that's listening, stands for potential, impact, and effort. So very similar. It has impact and effort in it as well. But it also has potential in it. Potential is, for me, like asking the right questions around understanding how much we can move the needle. And I think I use Pi a lot when it comes to little UI changes, especially on like website and like ads and those kind of tests that we run. I love to use Pi because sometimes we're like, yeah, let's do this test. It probably has like, it's on the homepage. So it has a big impact. A lot of people see it. The effort might be low, but the change is tiny, right? Just it's a headline or you change one word. Could be impactful, but maybe not. So when we prioritize it, we got to look through the lens of like, okay, so what does the change really look like? Like, what's the potential that this could drive really? Is there really, the impact is high, the effort is low, but is there really a lot of potential by changing the exclamation mark to a dot in a headline? So that's why I love the pie framework for like when it's like tiny things to really understand, oh, maybe this is too small and let's prioritize something that has more potential to move the needle.
Frameworks are great, but devil is in the details. The assessment of each of those can be very subjective as well, right? So I think it needs a bit of practice also with the team to kind of agree on some sort of a benchmark for what is impactful. One thing that I want to go back to is user research. I've been in a lot of meetings with product engineers and salespeople where people were thinking, oh, what should we build next? And as if it just could come out like this, out of this brainstorming session. What I've experienced myself, whenever I talk to clients or customers, is that there's a lot of ideas that just come from, talking to them. Yes, you can look at the competition, you can copy, you can try to catch up. But I think personally, I found the real bag of gold is when you talk to customers. And what I've heard frequently was people quoted Henry Ford's famous quote, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right?
They should. Yeah.
So I'm interested in how you do the user research, how you approach it, what kind of user research method that you're using. And tell me all your secrets.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm very passionate. Actually, I feel the same way, right? Like, and what I love to say is, if you want to innovate, don't ask your customers. Like they're not going to tell you your innovation, right? Because innovation, we sometimes also think it's just just getting sidetracked here for 30 seconds. But for innovation, we sometimes think of this really crazy thing, right? You think of iMac, for example. The iMac computer was this crazy innovation, but it's actually not true. The iMac was a personal computer, but the computer already existed. It's not that Steve Jobs created the computer. He just took something and made it better. And there's an innovative aspect to it. And even for us as humans, it's like, those are the most successful innovation. Because if you go too far, you have a problem. People have a problem adopting to it, right? Google Glasses is a good example. People are not ready for it. The Apple AirPods, I would say, people were like, this is kind of weird. You have this toothbrush in your ear, but somehow they got over that. And now everyone's wearing it. It's normal, right? But in the beginning, I remember I was like, I wasn't the early adopter because I was like, no. But they got enough early adopters that kind of pushed it into the main market, right? Sorry, got sidetracked there. Very passionate about innovation. I think that the thing with innovation and like figuring all of it out is not asking the customer, hey, what solution do you want? You're asking the customer, what pain points do you have? Like, what are your problems? How do you work? Like, especially in B2B SaaS, their workflows, right? Like our customers they need our software to do their work. We love the framework jobs to be done. This framework is basically asking, so what jobs do you have to do? And like, how can we support you in that? And those are the questions that you have to ask. You don't ask, what solutions do you need? What are the problems? We are here to come up with the solutions. That's our job.
One of the things you did not necessarily answer that question is, how do you actually talk to the customers? So do you basically set up a call with some of them? Is this more survey-based? Like what kind of tools or methods are you using?
Yeah. So we have what we call a customer advisory group, which is like basically it's a group of like a lot of different stakeholders that have a connection to the customer and can give us data points back to the product team. This is just a process that we set up, or like a program that we set up so that we can continuously get that input. The very classic thing is we're talking to our customer success managers. In B2B, it's an easy path basically to just, they are talking to our customers every day. So for us as product managers, we need to be in those conversations. I've never talked to a CSM and didn't come out on the other side with like so many ideas. So that's number one, right? The other thing is we work at Hootsuite. We have an amazing customer research team, user research team, and they recruit our customers. They recruit the customers of our competitors. They recruit people that just try our solution. They recruit people that have never heard of Hootsuite. Depending on what we want to research, they would recruit different groups. They would do the research basically for us and come up with those really succinct recommendations, right? One more thing that I think is super underrated in terms of the user research, just came to mind, is talk to your inbound team. So if you have like a blog team, SEO team, talk to them about what are people looking for? Because the first thing that people look for is, or where people look for something is on Google. What we had at Hootsuite, for example, they're people looking for link in bio. If 1 billion people are looking for link in bio, well, let's build our own link in bio solution, right? Like there's something there. The same people that look for that click on our blog posts and are very interested in our content. So they're close to our customer or our ICP potentially. And so let's explore that. Doesn't mean we've got to build it right away, but those are inputs, right? Use this as a jumping board for the products that you build.
I would like to talk about experiments that you've tested and run, and obviously, our audience is interested in building their own business or the career and to contribute to growth and building something that matters. So I'd like if you could just share with us like 2 or 3 experiments that you've tested in the past, and where you were either you knew that it would work and then you got great results, or it's was an idea that came from the left field and everybody was surprised and said, "Oh my God, this is working. Why?"
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say in terms of experimentation, only 25% rule of thumb of your experiments will actually be successful. And that's okay. That's why we experiment. That is the tool out of our toolbox, the experimentation tool. That's why we have it. To de-risk really early on, to understand really early on, is this something or isn't it something? In terms of like, giving you a specific, let's start with the one win. That's a very interesting one. I'll tell you in a second why. So what we've done is, in terms of activation, we know someone unlocks value at Hootsuite when they publish or post through Hootsuite to their social profiles, to multiple social profiles, ideally at once. That's kind of our value prop. What we've done is, or our hypothesis at the time was like, well, if that's what they need to do, let's cut everything when they come in, like all the blah, let's cut all of that. And let's just drop them right into that, hey, post something so that you see the value. So we've done that. Actually had a really, bad impact on our metrics. It was actually worse.
Oops.
We activated worse, right? And so what we could have done, or what the team could have done at that point is like, well, it didn't work. Let's move on to the next thing. But what we actually did, and I think that's kind of the biggest advice I would give anyone that's doing experiments, is you had an hypothesis. And what the first question that I ask when I see the results, when I see how an experiment performed, is like, why do I think it performed this way? What are my hypotheses that it performed this way? And what it does is it actually kicks off like a cycle of like, I had a hypothesis, I build, measure, learn from it. And now I have new hypotheses coming out of the results and keep going. So for the example that I just shared, we've done that. We asked ourselves, okay, so why didn't it work? What are our hypotheses? And we're like, well, maybe, one smart person on my team said, maybe they're just overwhelmed, right? Like we dropped them into like very close to kind of like the end of their workflow, but they have to make a lot of decisions, upload content, do this, etc., blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that we were thinking about was like, well, they have to select which social profiles they want to post to, Twitter and LinkedIn, for example. What if we pre-select that for them? So what if we look doing onboarding, we ask them to connect their LinkedIn with the Hootsuite solution? What if we just look at the first 2 that they connected, because probably those are the ones that are most important to them, and just pre-select that for them in that process. So basically anticipating your users' needs, which was a learning coming out of it, not to spoil the results, but we've done exactly the same, pre-selected some social profiles for them that they may want to post to, and have seen a 10% increase in our activation metrics. So exactly the same experiment, great success, but only after we've went through another iteration of it. When you ask for like, what are your most successful experiments? I got to tell you, like the most successful experiments to me are the ones which took like 5 iterations to get there. And the 4 iterations that were not successful, quote unquote, they're successes because they got us to that 5th iteration, which worked.
You're basically saying that, you tested something, it didn't work, and then you kept pushing in that same direction, right? So what's your guiding principle? Why, did you keep pushing with a 3rd, 4th iteration?
Yeah. I think it comes down to a couple of things. Do we think that if we find the winning formula, it could move the needle? You got to see, because it's effort, right? Like basically you're increasing your effort every time you do that. Then it's about, can we actually come up with some really good hypotheses based on the results that we see? The point is like, don't just stop because it failed. Ask the question of like, why? And then see if something comes out of it. If nothing comes out of it, fine, stop there. Know when to pull the plug. Last thing I will say to this is it's somewhat related, right? Like be data informed instead of data driven. You hear this a lot these days. Like it started with data driven because no one was using data. That's why it was like, let's use data, and you should use data. It's a really great tool, but don't be blind, right? Like don't follow it blindly. Let me give you a really interesting example. So we've done a couple of years back, we've done a price test, and the way we've done this is we just changed and a lot of companies do that, change the prices on the website, but don't actually do all the things to change the prices in the backend yet. And what you expect is when you increase prices is that your signups go down. You expect less people signing up for your product because, they see a higher price and some are not willing to pay that. So that's natural. What we do is like, we do the math, right? It's like you have 10% less signups, but at 100% higher price, it's a no-brainer. It's still going to be profitable for you. So we tested different price points, and most of them came back negative. Like there's some kind of like negative impact on signups, which is fine. We did the math, etc. And one price point, really high increase, let's say it was 100% increase, came back with, we got more signups. If you're data driven company, you would be like, great, more signups, a higher price point, cool. Don't follow blindly the data. And we didn't at the time. We're like, this is counterintuitive. This doesn't make any sense. And then in our case, either it's like it was a tracking error or it was not statistically significant. I can't remember, right? But the point is like you ask like, why? Does this make sense?
When you tested these different price points, like how did you do this? Because you're kind of telling me, you change the front end, but not necessarily the back end. So let's say instead of paying, $40, it was, you put 35 or 45. I would still click on the $40 or your new price point, and I would still end up in the checkout with the old pricing.
In the checkout, we would still show the new pricing, but then we would actually just charge you the lower price. And it only works this way. We call this surprise and delight, because nobody's going to complain that they get charged less than what they thought they're going to get charged. It's the only disadvantage doing it this way. It's expensive, because you have to get less customers into the door and everyone is still paying the lower price point. So it's really a learning exercise, but you can de-risk your pricing changes a lot. You don't do this for a long time, obviously, because it gets more expensive every day you run this experiment. But you run it for a week or 2 weeks or maybe even 3 weeks, and you get a good feeling, and you really de-risk the decision there.
You mentioned on LinkedIn that although marketing has a huge variety of subspecialties, like, CRO, CEO, email, PR, etc., we don't find the same range of expertise when we talk about product management.
Right.
And you were kind of saying that it's kind of time to work on that. When you think about expertise or subspecialties for product management, what comes to mind for you?
From my experience, there's like 4 big camps in product management, right? You have obviously the core functionality, and this is kind of how we categorize everyone. Everyone we talk about product management and we think like building the products, like the core functionalities, right? But the reality is we have some PMs that are a little bit more specialized on the backend platform, also called. The third one is growth. This is where I'm very active in, right? The difference to core, as I said, is core is, I like to say, creating the value for customers. Growth is connecting the customer with that value. And then you have innovation, right? We talked about this earlier. It's like not everything you build is an innovation, but you should have a track for innovation. And you need to have some PMs that also think about innovation. They also call it sometimes 0 to 1 because they just basically validating that there's something there.
I have a few follow-up questions on product-led pipeline, which is another thing that you've talked about. And my understanding is that, historically companies have focused or have relied on filling their pipeline with sales. But you talk about product-led pipeline. Can you just define a bit what you mean by this and how companies can, what companies can do to go in that direction?
Yeah, I think this is the somewhat sensitive topic a little bit. I think because when we talk about product-led growth, what often happens, it has a little bit of a bad connotation because it seems like that anyone that is in love with product-led growth, they're basically suggesting that the customer doesn't need any human assistance. There doesn't need to be any sales. Doesn't need to be any customer success. No human assistance, basically, right? But nothing could be further from the truth. Product-led growth is basically leveraging the product whenever the customer wants to self-serve. Traditionally, on marketing, what happens is a very traditional B2B funnel would look like marketing is driving awareness. It would build like mechanisms to get leads into your system. Once the leads are in the system, there might be some nurturing, etc. But once they become opportunities, sales really kicks in. Opportunities is what makes up this pipeline, basically, right? Opportunities are the ones that really show interest in like buying your software or your tool. And then that's when sales kicks in, and sales really takes it then from the I'm considering your solution to the conversion stage, which is like actually converting them into customers. My point was, right now we have marketing traditionally giving it to sales. What if we put the product in between to just enhance the whole thing, make it more powerful, more profitable even, right? Because what happens is if you can do marketing, you drive the awareness, someone signs up for the product, show some product usage even, you still qualify them, but you qualify them and you have product usage, you can build this pipe, like you can basically create opportunities that are a lot stronger, even like a lot hotter leads, because now you not just only have someone that's in the consideration of your tool. And when sales comes in at that point and picks them up, it's an easy sell. They can sell so much faster. Sales cycles go down. There's so many advantages of doing that. My point here was build a pipeline, leverage the product to build a pipeline, because that pipeline will be 10x, perform 10x better when it comes to selling.
I agree with you. A lot of people tend to look at what we could lose as opposed to, what you can gain from AI or an idea like product-led pipeline. But what does that mean to be able to do this? If you have a SaaS business, does that mean you offer a free trial? Is this like the main way to actually do this?
There's different mechanisms, I would say, right? Like you got to figure out what this looks like for you. I think in general, what I see is the market, like most customers, at least in B2B, want to try out the product in some ways. So here are the three things that I see. One is just like a demo with like dummy data. So you don't really have to sign up. You just click and you see, this is our product. This is how it looks like. Here's some dummy data in it. The second thing that I see is a free product, what we call the freemium motion. You can sign up for a free product. You never have to pay, but you have very limited functionality. That is very good in the beginning to drive acquisition. Free product is really just an acquisition mechanism, but it's very tricky. I gotta tell you this, because I went through this quite a lot with companies I worked for. It's very tricky to figure out what are the right we call it entitlements. Like how much do you give the customer on a free plan, basically, right? Like how much do you open this up? Where do you set the limits of using the free plan? If you open up too much, there's no incentive for them to pay you. If you make it too little, there's no initial value that they get out of it. So they're like, this is not valuable, and they drop, right? Canva is doing that, I'm not affiliated with them in any ways, but Canva is doing that because I'm just impressed how they've done it. Very, very smoothly. They found this one feature that people are willing to pay for. It's interesting. It's the background remover. It's just so simple and elegant that I had to mention this. And then there's the trial, and trial is very powerful because you can open up all the functionality and get like people to experience, oh my God, there's so much value here, but you time box it. You say 14 days, 30 days, maybe 7 days, and then you lose access to it. Those are the three things that I see in terms of how companies can leverage the product.
We've talked about ChatGPT, and obviously it's huge at the moment. I think there's a lot of hype, like every time there's something new coming up, but this is not just anything. I think it's huge, and it'll become a very important in how we do business and how we work. I'm interested in hearing about your take on this. How do you see this changing how people build like SaaS products? How they include that into their product, or how they use it, maybe you and your team in your daily work?
Great question. and a very timely one. I think to your point, I think it's a big hype right now, and rightfully so. I think what we have is the foundation. We have the technology, but it's on us now to figure out how can we use that to build something that's really useful for our customers. And every company is different in that regard. If you just copy paste what we have, like a conversational AI, basically, this might not be the thing that your customer needs, right? Like just that. Like I think you need to, this is my take on this, you have to kind of look deeper and leverage the technology, but then build it in the way that it's useful for your customers. It's very exciting. Very exciting. And I got to tell you, like, we're working on some stuff at Hootsuite that's gonna come out in the next couple of months. So, anyone that's interested in our kind of solution, brace yourself. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming that's gonna help social media marketers. But I think we're just scratching the surface.
I agree, and I think a lot of people will find twisted, weird, evil ways of using it. Unfortunately, like for any
Always.
new technological development, but I think it can boost your productivity and your creativity, for that matter, in a way that we could have never envisioned before. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen. Henning, if we want our audience to find you, I think LinkedIn might be the best channel.
LinkedIn is best. Reach out. Happy to chat.
Thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate that. And I'm also looking forward to the hot stuff that you're cooking at Hootsuite. So we'll keep an eye on what's coming up in the next few months. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michel. Appreciate it.